Welcome to another episode of the Cynical Writer. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that the best way to support this channel is to purchase my books, and I've left some links in the description section in case you're interested. Now, what is the relationship between creativity and setting? Because it's a very complicated relationship, and a lot of people don't really even think about this, and I didn't think about it for a long time. But what I've often found is that when I immerse myself in either a setting or a time period, I often find that I end up thinking about things that I never really considered before. For example, I'm currently writing a book that takes place during the 1920s in New York. And currently I'm thinking about the relationship between actors on Broadway and Hollywood actors, and how they viewed one another, and how at the time a lot of New York actors were going to Hollywood in the late 20s and early 30s because of sound. And I just think there are a lot of interesting dynamics there, and I really didn't have an interest in that prior to writing this book, but because I'm immersed in this New York setting, I'm thinking about these things quite a lot. And I think other writers need to know that, is that sometime when you immerse yourself in a setting, you'll find yourself thinking about things and caring about things that perhaps you never gave any thought to before. And I just think that's really interesting. And I can give you other examples as well. For example, when I was writing my story, Mournful Wanderer takes place in the South, and it's basically about a Southern belle who's being haunted by the ghost of her dead child, and how her husband is away fighting in a war and she's not sure whether he's alive or dead. And so I basically had to think, from the mindset of a Southern belle. How would this Southern belle think? And because of that, there are, I guess you could say, some pro-Southern sentiments in the story, mainly because those characters would have been, pro-Confederacy. Now, it's not explicit, it's just in some of the things that they say, because at the time, those characters would have been, pro-Confederacy. For example, there's a doctor in Mournful Wanderer whose nephew went off to war, and he's thinking, well, why did he have to go when it was a lost cause anyway? I mean, that's how Confederates saw the Civil War at the time. It was a lost cause, and they were very disappointed. They thought that they were in the right. So again, this has nothing to do with what I think personally, but I try to get into the mindset of the characters, and so I think that when you immerse yourself in a setting, you'll find yourself thinking about things that you just never considered before. Or I can give you another example. In Empty Sounds of the Wind is about a soldier who comes home at the end of World War II, and to basically reunite with his father, because they had a falling out before he went to fight in the war. And his fiance is living with the father, which again the main character finds very suspicious, and the fiance is kind of mooching off of the father, which again during time periods like that, if you had a woman, let's say in the 1940s, who couldn't find work because women were often, not always, but were often discriminated against, then they would often mooch off of not just their husbands or their boyfriends, but also just anyone that they knew. I mean, this was something that was very common in the 1940s. And also, if you look at my book, Symphony of Perdition, which is about mental health, there are a lot of psychological, I guess you could say, theories in Symphony of Perdition, which have since been debunked, but at the time, that's what a lot of people thought. So, and again, this has nothing to do, by the way, with doing a lot of research, because sometimes I actually don't do a lot of research for these things. Sometimes it's just about getting into a character's head and thinking, well, how would they feel in this situation? So sometimes you can take just a little bit of background knowledge and then expand on that within the character's own mindset. And you can also add some of your own personal opinions and observations as well. So I actually think that setting is just a wonderful way of attaining a type of, I guess you could say, superior creativity. Because when you surround yourself in a certain atmosphere and a certain ambiance, it can really spark ideas that perhaps you never considered before. So I hope you enjoyed my speech for today. Next week I will return with a different topic. Again, if you would like to support this channel, you can check out my books in the description section. Don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, goodbye.